right, this conversation is going to be all about the future of grocery shopping. And so I'm excited to have three expert panelists to talk about where the world of grocery shopping and food shopping is going to go. So you all have a little bit of context and kind of understand where everyone is coming from. We're going to do some quick introductions and hear a little bit about everyone's company. So Oisin.
Oisin, yes.
I'm so
one of those
names.
Irish
Yeah, and my son's name is Cormac, by the way, so I should be able to say a good Irish name. Tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing at Keychain.
For sure, happy to dig into it. I'm Oisin Hanrahan, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Keychain. Keychain is solving the problem of how product gets to market. So you think about the biggest brands and retailers in the world who make private label, you think about startup brands, and you think, well, surely there's an easy way for them to figure out how to make product. And the reality is there's not. It's incredibly challenging to find a manufacturer, to vet them, to figure out like whether they can make your product. So at Keychain, we built an AI-powered platform that analyzes millions of products, analyzes hundreds of thousands of attributes, and you can go to Keychain and say, I want to make an own brand version of a Kind bar, and we'll analyze that Kind bar and we'll say that's guillotine cut, it's flow wrapped, it's got the following allergen requirements, and we'll spit out here are the 15 companies that can make that product. And then we build we built a SaaS platform that helps you bring that product all the way through to an MSA signed with your manufacturer. And we hope that by doing this, we'll reduce the cost of bringing product to market and allow brands and retailers to launch more product faster.
That's great. And Cynthia, you were part of the conversation about how people are buying food in different places and spaces and oftentimes on the go. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing with your company.
Thank you. My name is Cynthia Holland, and that's right. I've been working in the world of e-commerce since the beginning of e-commerce, helping retailers and brands figure out more ways to get more of their goods into the hands of their customers through the channels and through the methods that the customers want. And that's changed over the last 20 plus years of digital commerce from I just want to have something delivered to me to I want to be able to get recommendations from my friends to have it delivered. I want to be able to buy on a phone. And now what we're finding in the last couple of years is that pre-order or pickup has become an expectation that a lot of consumers want. Yes, I want it delivered to me, but a lot of customers, 75% of customers say, I would rather pick it up if I could instead of having it delivered to me for a whole lot of reasons. So in my current company, what we're doing is building that functionality into cars. So a customer can say, hey, Audi, I'm hungry. And then shopping with my Audi, of course, my Audi is going to say, okay, Cynthia, I'll have your groceries ready, waiting for you when you get there. So using that connected consumer device to allow all of us to bring more customers to our doorsteps.
Great. And Stefan came down from Seattle as well, like me. I've been talking to you for a few years now with Shelf Engine, and you've gotten acquired, I think, in the last couple of years. But tell us a little bit about what Shelf Engine does and how you've been building that platform.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Stefan Kelb, co-founder and CEO of Shelf Engine. Shelf Engine, we do something that you don't really get to see, or at least you don't think that you get to see, and we work kind of on the back end of a grocery store. So we do forecasting and orders for grocers. We're in about 7,000 grocery stores across the country today. We order everything that you can kind of imagine in a grocery store, all the way from produce to a deli sandwich to a box of cereal to a carton of milk. The kind of unique aspect of what we do here is, well, we were kind of AI before AI was cool, but we have this AI that enables us to be able to order without human intervention. And the majority of grocery today, they have a handheld in the grocery store where they're looking at and adjusting orders. We do away with that completely. And most importantly, we're able to radically reduce waste, usually by 50%, and increase sales at the same time for our customers. So it's an exciting space. It's a space that's growing very quickly. And obviously, as retailers need more solutions around kind of reducing the amount of labor going towards perfunctory tasks, as well as reaching better metrics, it's a really fun space to be in.
That's great. So I'm a grocery store nerd. I love going to food stores and walk around and seeing all the cool products. Like, I don't know, who loves going to grocery stores and shopping, right? I mean, it's such a fun place. But
Wait, do I have to bring my kids?
no, you're by yourself.
They're small. They're
Your
5 and
hands-
3.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
can go
if
by
I bring my
yourself.
kids, it's not a fun experience.
You're by
Basically,
yourself
spend the time apologizing.
and just by yourself, so you can raise your hand. And so I've been all fascinated by how the grocery store has been changing in the last few years. But it's an industry that's struggling. We just saw the big merger between the two biggest grocery chains in America kind of fell apart. Who knows if that'll get back together in a few days, but because it's such a margin-constrained business. I was fascinated after COVID and I've been watching online grocery for years and how it just stagnated, and I wondered why more people didn't buy groceries and have it delivered to them. But it's finally started going up about 5 years ago because it had to, and those numbers have kind of maintained. So where are we in terms of the innovation around grocery store shopping and some of these new features like online shopping? Do you think that we're going to continue to see innovation, Oshin?
So I think we're at this point where we've seen a huge shift from a traditional way of buying to fringe people saying, hey, I'm going to do a little bit of online shopping 10, 15, 20 years ago, to the vast majority of people are now doing some form of shopping online, on mobile, even for grocery. And what that means is that the next iteration actually has the potential to be even more powerful than this shift. So if you think about what we've done with online, we've effectively taken our behavior pattern, which was, hey, I'm running out of this thing, or I need this thing, commit it to memory, and then I buy it. Some people have opted for the Amazon or the Google shopping model where I add it to cart, but it still involves a lot of human behavior. I think the next phase of this is automation and making certain parts of the entire experience automagical, where you just...
Is it anticipatory in a sense of what your needs are?
Oh,
or-
absolutely. It's anticipatory of the need, but it's also analysis of your, like, take your refrigerator is probably the simplest place to start. And people have attempted to do versions of this, but it's analysis of what's in your refrigerator, looking at your calendar to say, are you traveling up over the coming week or two, and saying, great, we're going to pre-order or we're going to restock these basics for you. And I think we've kind of imagined versions of that. And there's certain categories where you don't want that. You want to choose your own, if you're going to make certain meals, you want to choose them. But for basic products, I think we're going to see a shift toward automagical restocking of those
But
things.
hasn't Amazon tried to do everything by subscription 5 years ago? Oh, this is something you order every 3 months, put it on subscription. I wrote about a patent they had 6 years ago. It's called basically preemptive shopping. They would anticipate your needs, and when you get home, dinner would be sitting on your table. In some ways, it's kind of cool, but it's also dystopian.
So the problem with the subscribe and save or whatever, whichever version of it you're gone for, is the thing doesn't know that I've actually ended up with way too much of whatever it is already. And I end up with instead of having a little bit of Tide Pods and it shows up, it's I end up with 4 boxes of Tide Pods and my kids are jumping up and down on them. There's blue dye all over the floor. And I wonder really that somehow washes off? But I think there's something that's going to happen around real analysis of your own inventory. We can use computer vision now to analyze the inventory you have incredibly cheaply and reorder only when you actually need it. And I think that shift, if you think about the implication of it, it really is going to take quite a bit of choice away from the consumer on what product shows up.
Cynthia, you're trying to obviously give more order opportunities to grocery retailers and convenience store retailers, and also provide more convenience to humans in their everyday lives by putting it into the automobile. Does what Oshin say make sense to you?
It makes sense that you're going to be changing the way that what you're going to buy gets aggregated, how the decisions get made, how much of that gets automated. I think in addition to that, what changes is who's doing the buying and the frequency with which you are buying. So, we go back to, the 1950s kind of grocery shopping where mom makes the list in advance once a week and goes with the little clicker thing and walks around and goes aisle by aisle by aisle and, prepares for the menus for the week. That's with convenience of automation and subscriptions and things. You go to the grocery store every single day. Some days you go to the grocery store, some days the grocery store comes to you. So ways that you can interact with the store, whether it's by subscription, whether it's have my regular Friday pizza or, ingredients ready for me when I swing by on a Friday afternoon on my way home from work, and have that be automated, but remind me as I'm driving by to stop by and pick it up, is going to add to that frequency. Are men doing more of the grocery shopping because technology and automation have come into it is really interesting. The other thing that I think is driving that piece of the grocery pie is that grocery stores have gone from being staples and groceries to, Boston Chicken created an opportunity for us to have salad bars and prepared foods and those kinds of things in grocery. That's been 20 plus years now. But now you look at things like ghost kitchens that are causing grocery stores to become convenience stores and QSRs themselves. You're driving an entirely different purchase occasion to grocery. So the frequency with which you visit the grocery store fundamentally changes the way I need to be able to make purchases.
Yeah, there's a blurring of what's happening, right? Like Wonder out of the East Coast raised about $1 billion. Their original strategy was to deliver food to your curbside in like highly automated vans, but now they pivoted and they're actually going and putting these little mini restaurants into Walmarts. So, Stefan, it feels like the grocery and food buying retail market is kind of like really messy right now. There's a lot of blurring of lines. Is that a good thing for innovation?
Well, I think the problem that we're not realizing today, and I think the question that we should ask is, what needs to be true for us to see some of these really innovative models show up, right? So we can kind of dream these amazing ways that food are going to get to our doorstep, get to us, or the shopping experience. The reality today is if you take something like Instacart, do you know that when Instacart goes into the store, 14% of the items that they go look for are not there? This is today. We're not talking like when Instacart launched or whatever. We're talking about today. Instacart goes and tries to find these items. And as a heavy Instacart user, it's really annoying, When your Instacart shopper is out there, you're ready with your phone because they're gonna start picking up some random stuff that you don't want in your cart because they can't find what you're looking for. Okay, that is a really big problem because we're talking about kind of a level one experience there. If we want to talk about the next level of an experience as a shopper, we need to have these fundamentals fixed, which is we actually need to know what's in the store, right? That's just a clear one. I think we've got some real barriers that need to be fixed before we can have some of these really innovative pieces launched. Now, what we're seeing, to get into your question here, it's what is Instacart doing? Oh, Instacart's leaning very heavily into saying, how can we support the operations of the store so that we can have these innovative models be able to grow and flourish, because otherwise we can't really execute on them.
This problem of out of stock is like, you think about like the rate of change. This problem of out of stock is only going to get worse. Like we think about like what causes it, it's the proliferation of product in the store. And the driver of proliferation of product is, I don't know, people have walked into the store and like taken a step back recently, but if you go into the store, if you think about any category in the store, like you think gluten-free is a category, 5-7 years ago, there was probably 1 or 2 gluten-free breads. There's a dozen gluten-free breads. You think about like a nut-free product, there's hundreds of nut-free cookies now. Across the board, we've seen this massive proliferation of product. And that change is only going to continue. And it's driven by the fact that the whole ecosystem around launching product, it has become substantially more affordable, easy, cheap to launch product than ever before. And the implication of that is that the number of products we're going to have, the individual consumption of that product is actually going down because the product volumes has gone through the roof. So like 14% today, because you've got whatever 250,000 products in an average big box grocery store. That number is, they've talked, obviously there's a lot of talk about SKU rationalization, but that number is on a trajectory that's only going up. Like the number of products in the store is going through the roof. So a decade from now, will it be 14% or will it be 15, 20, 30% of these products are not available?
In this country specifically versus grocery in the rest of the world, we do have this problem of generally being over-skewed. And it also adds the problem that the average rate of sale per SKU is getting to such a low number that if you want to have a facing in the store, sometimes you're literally looking, okay, you sell this like half of this per week. It doesn't even make sense to even have a single facing. I agree. I think we've got a really interesting challenge. I'm actually really excited about your company and what it's doing because I've gone through this experience in my past career of what it's like to launch a product, and it is very difficult. Now that you're going to make it a lot easier, what does the future of grocery look like? It's a really interesting question. It's hard to project because I can't imagine adding that many more SKUs into the store today. It's a really difficult operational problem.
It is a little bit more than a SKU issue, though, if you go back into the history of e-commerce and realize that this buy online, pick up in store, inventory out of stock issue is something that non-food, non-grocery retailers have been dealing with for 20 years and trying to figure out why that problem existed. And a lot of the reason that that problem exists, and this is something that grocery is only beginning to think about because e-commerce for grocery is relatively new. It's actually not having correct inventory counts from the very beginning. Because you have a box in the back room that's not on the shelf, you probably are not out of stock. You probably just don't have it on the shelf. Or, of course, this is the really fascinating thing that's happening, is that, and I'm not going to name names of companies, but professional shoppers who are getting paid on commission on the orders sometimes mark things as out of stock when they get to the store so that they can intentionally pick a more expensive product because they get higher numbers. And that's happening quite frequently. So some of those out of stock numbers are being, there are a lot of things that we have to address in the retail space from a technology perspective, from an incentive standpoint, that affect these inventory numbers in addition to the increase in SKUs. And technology is going to solve all of these quickly.
So is the answer maybe with the SKU proliferation, better data and using tools like AI? And I'm not trying to like serve a softball to you, Oisin, because that's kind of what your product's doing in a sense, but like it seems like AI is one way to maybe kind of get our arms around this proliferation to understand what's on shelves in real time, and then maybe get more optimized order flows that don't cause so much headaches for the people at the front lines of the retail side.
Look, AI is going to change so much of the monotonous behavior and monotonous work that so many people are doing. So, you know, whether it's analysis of what's on the shelf through computer vision, whether it's analysis of previous trends in ordering, whether it's solving the problem of shrinkage, whether it's solving the bad behavior problem or the let's call it the quirk of incentives problem around commissions and product choice. You know, there's so many different parts of retail where we've created these kind of blocks of work. Like, think about this one. Between the manufacturer and the retailer today, so Target or Walmart, any big box retailer wants to launch a product. There's an army of brokers that sit in the middle. Companies like Advantage or Damon or Crossmark and a whole slew of others who sit in the middle, and they employ thousands of people who are largely doing product discovery to say who can make this product. Like, that's going away. Like the idea that whole stream of work, like that work stream is not going to exist a decade from now. Sure, there'll be relationships that need to be built. Sure, there'll be there'll be a softer aspect of the work. There'll be value add. But the idea that large groups of people are simply going to trade on information asymmetry, that's going away. And we're, as consumers, we're going to see a benefit from it. We're going to see lower cost. Like, we're going to see.
That's if the retailers don't try to eat the margins, right?
I mean, whenever we see costs come out of retail, the consumers ultimately benefit. It's just so competitive.
Yeah.
Like, we talk about this, this merger that may or may not happen. Like, my concern is not whether the merger will happen and we'll have some sort of oligopolistic behavior or monopoly behavior. My concern is the merger doesn't happen and Amazon and a couple of others own the entire market 10 years from now.
Yeah. I talked a little bit about on my first panel about AI and food, about Jensen's keynote from NVIDIA and how he talked a lot about physical AI. and how he sees the ChatGPT moment coming for robotics and computer vision. And I just wonder what that ultimately may do for service layers and customer interactions and inventory level keeping at food retail. I would imagine with better kind of foundational technology, we could see some interesting improvements and product and technologies there.
Yeah, listen, first of all, I got to say, very excited. There are a few things that get me as excited in the world as talking about inventory. Inventory is the crux of retail. It's a really fascinating problem. It's a really challenging problem. The future of AI is in a handful of areas, and one really key, interesting area that's going to change food altogether, and it's going to change logistics in food, has to do with time series. Time series foundation models are about to transform everything that you're seeing in logistics. And the reason is that the food that got to your plate, the food that got to the store, came through all these different layers. They came through different warehouses, they came through different trucks, and they came through and they were registered through all these different kinds of really old, bad pieces of software that were built like 30 years ago, right? This is today the way that the food ecosystem works in this country. A lot of those are working with really bad forecasting. And yes, there are new pieces of software coming out, but most importantly, the really interesting component is think about ChatGPT, but for time series analysis. And that basically means that you can input this and make the forecasting, even in all this terrible software, you can make it good. And that means I think we're going to be able to reduce the amount of waste in a major way. We're going to be able to automate a lot of these functions. I mean, you should see some of these produce warehouses, some of these big distributors, they have giant rooms of people on Excel, like rows of computers of people on Excel. I'm not kidding. Like, this is how your produce is getting to the store, right? There are people, the meat that is ordered in your store, there are people who are walking in the store who are looking about how much meat there is in there. They figure it out. It was actually one of those lists of all the vendors that are in between. Those are the people that walk in the stores, and they're trying to figure out how much more meat to order for tomorrow. That's how it's done. Like, this is about to change in a major way. I'm really excited for everything that's going to be the time series foundation models, and I think that's going to transform things in a big way. There is robotics as well, but we've been talking about inventory, and I got too excited. So
I love that. That's great. What are you excited about, Cynthia, in terms of like some of these enabling technologies you're hearing about at CES, and how that may translate ultimately to food shopping 5 or 10 years from now?
So I'm not to be self-serving. I'm going to tell you that literally everywhere I've gone for the last 3 days, from the keynote speeches throughout, people are talking about connected car commerce. And I've been excited about that for years. Obviously, I think that the way in which we have interaction with the concierge level kinds of shopping in the mall, the way that we can think about all the different kinds of ways to do pickup is something I think we're looking at an entirely new channel of purchasing, whether that's from inside a video game, when I'm sitting playing a video game and I get a little pop-up that comes up that says, do you want food to be delivered from you? There's lots and lots of different ways across multiple devices that all of us are going to be able to interact, and just gets, because we got so used during pandemic to having stuff brought to us and made available to us. I think there's incremental purchases to be had, not cannibalization.
We had the previous panel was on robotics and food, and we had the COO of Flytrex. We need to see the car integration with the drone integration, so you can just order food in traffic and have the drone drop it into your sunroof. That's important. So let's talk a little bit more about in terms of like the customer experience. It's interesting to me that Amazon ultimately had to dial back some of this just walk out push. And I think it was because people were kind of freaked out. It felt like they were shoplifting to a certain degree. Like, people were not used to like picking food off the store shelf and just walking out with it. And so I always kind of thought of it, you should have all these modalities in grocery stores. Some people want the white glove experience at the cashier. Some people like me, I just like to do self-checkout where I scan, but I'm still checking out. And then some people just want to feel like they're shoplifting. Oshin, where does the customer experience go in terms of technology? Ultimately, will we all just like walk out with food and not have to go to talk to cashier?
I am a straight up shoplifter, 100%. If in doubt, let there be no ambiguity. I want to pick up the thing and I want to bolt for the door. It is interesting that Amazon dialed it back. I think it has to do with what you're talking about in terms of consumer behavior. I think they were also a little early on the implementation of the technology, in that it wasn't quite ready. So they, I think it's well documented at this point. They also had pretty substantial groups of people in rooms like this, looking at monitors, watching what people were doing, and making corrections to when the computer vision didn't quite get it right. So, obviously that doesn't scale the same way that having, people decide which packet of meat to order doesn't scale. I think the human oversight on computer vision didn't quite.
There's a little more Mechanical Turk than we originally thought to that.
I think it was a little substantially more Mechanical Turk than we originally thought. So I think as that gets better, and in parallel with that, I think our perception will also change, and I think we'll feel less like shoplifters and more like, hey, we're just picking stuff up, and the error rates will also come down. That's going to be a great shopping experience. Like you go to the grocery store, you want to pick up a dozen items. The self-checkout's great. You want to put a whole trolley through it. Like, I kind of feel like Amazon or Walmart or Target or whoever should pay me to put the things through it. I feel like I'm working there.
And some of it's by purchase occasion, right? So like if I'm at Safeco Field or like watching the Mariners game where they have just walked out in the stadium in Seattle, I want to get back to my seat as quickly as possible to see that next inning. So I want to choplift because I could just grab my food and go back to the seat. But maybe when I'm doing the week's family groceries, I don't do that, right, Stephen? And Cynthia, what did you have to say?
Well, has anybody shopped at Choice Market in Denver? The Choice Market experience is remarkable, and this is a small group who's built grocery from the ground up specifically for that. What happens, it's a small-ish grocery store. When you walk in the door, you either scan with your palm, or you scan with your credit card, or you don't, and you go and you pick everything up and you go to the register. So it's actually the consumer choice whether or not you're shoplifting or you're doing the traditional way. And their data is changing over time as you see people who have the loyalty with that grocery over and over and over again. And like you said, by purchase occasion, if I'm going in and grabbing a sandwich that I've pre-ordered, it's totally different. It's really remarkable what they've done.
Yeah, I think the reality of the situation right now is that computer vision really isn't at the place for large format grocery. And we can see, like the organization in the world that's going to be able to execute that on the best way possible just wasn't able to pull it off. I think the backup option to be able to do something in this realm is to go the RFID route. We've actually done a couple tests in this realm. There's some booths actually at this show that are interesting, that are some versions of that, which is essentially putting tags on products. The reason why RFID is really interesting is because a UPC is unique to a SKU, RFID is unique to an actual product, which can do a lot of things for the entire supply chain, but also for the consumer experience. That is likely, I think, the best scenario that we're going to see, where we're going to have a true self-checkout experience that's very much expedited. The problem is you basically have to get an enormous number of CPGs on board to actually put these RFID labels on there. This is basically how the rest of retail has been able to solve things, but now we're talking for a very small margin, small dollar value item. Unfortunately, because I really like the future of this, I would love to walk out of the grocery store and not talk to anybody. Like, that would be wonderful. I don't really think that we're there, unfortunately, and I think right now the only real path that we have is RFID, but that would be exciting.
There's another technology that's kind of subtly worked over a decade or so to change the consumer behavior of retail that we don't really talk about anymore. And it started to become mainstream about 10 or 15 years ago, which is all of the data analysis of who's buying what at an individual level. And the thing that it changed was it changed the composition of the products on the shelf. And about 10 or 15 years ago, Tesco in the UK started to launch their private label products. And instead of just launching private label, this is probably a little more than 15, 20 years ago, they launched, instead of just launching basic versions of the product like Tesco Value, they launched a Tesco Value and a mid-layer, And then they launched a Tesco Finest. And what they did with Tesco Finest was they took every margin dollar that was going to exist in the product and they put it back into the product to create a product that was better than the branded competitor. And the only reason, the only way in which they could justify doing it, and it all started with the little club card, the Tesco club card, was they were saying, okay, well look, if we can get you to buy, I think it ended up at about a dozen products. If we can get you to buy a dozen of our finest products, like Tesco Finest was the brand, in any given week, then we can pretty much dial down our marketing spend on you because you're not going anywhere else. We've delivered you a basket of products across your 50-odd products you're going to buy. We've got you to buy these 12. And as you know, obviously we tried to roll out the tracking in the U.S. in various formats through the credit card and through the checkout with the phone number and the loyalty cards. But really, the analysis that we've got over the last 7 or 8 years has pushed a lot of the US grocers to adopt a similar model where instead of value being on the shelf as the primary driver of, or sorry, price as the primary driver of the private label products now, almost all the grocers have a premium private label product. And that's driving consumer behavior in a pretty substantial way. And it's only because of the data analysis to say, if we can get a shopper to buy a certain percentage of these private label products that we make almost no margin on compared to the 30-40% gross on other product, that they could afford to do this. And it's pretty substantially changed the composition of the grocery store, like the SKUs on the shelf, to the point where over 20% of the products now are private label products. And you think about like Amazon, Whole Foods, like the private label component of grocery is one of the fastest growing parts of grocery because of this shift away from value to a premium experience, which is only possible because of the analysis they can do on the shopper, which is like, hey, we know if you're going to buy this product that you're actually going to.
That's fascinating. Was that driven by Tesco? Was that a little bit also maybe a little bit of the Trader Joeization? Are they just trying to emulate them to a certain degree?
Yeah, there's certainly a Trader Joe part of this as well. I mean, which, you know, you can go all the way and say, okay, well, look at the European model. You can look at Lidl or you can look at Aldi. You can look at those where in the average across the U.S., by the way, is about 20% of the grocery is private label. In Europe, it's like 40, 42, depending on which country you pick. You pick Germany, it's up in the like mid 40s, which obviously has significant concentration around those retailers like Lidl and Aldi.
That's super fascinating. So on the AI side, in terms of the data training, Stefan, for you, in terms of you're getting your data sets to train your AI, how do you have those conversations with grocers, and how do you? I mean, are they willing? Are they excited about this because ultimately it'll help them?
Very, very carefully. I've had this very uncomfortable conversation with retailers, and it happens in kind of two different ways. The first one is you have a lot of executives there who are seeing a lot of reports that are fairly polished, but they don't really realize where the data is actually coming from. And I have this fairly uncomfortable task in the beginning of a sales process to go uncover two things for a grocer. The first thing is I've got to tell them what their true waste rate is. The majority of executives today in this country do not know what their waste rate is. There is a very large customer of ours. When we first came into them, they have over 2,000 stores. I came in, I said, what do you think your waste rate is in produce? They told me 12%. I was like, it's actually about 52%. That's how much produce you're wasting. And they were not able to measure that, right? The second part is how dirty and how poorly stored their data is. And this is fundamentally a really big problem that we're seeing in grocery, that if you want to take this data and action it in any way, you have to do a lot of work with it. Today in our AI, actually, if you are part of our data science team, there's a high likelihood that you're actually on the data cleaning side of things rather than any of the forecasting side of things, which is, and it permeates through every single department in the grocery store. I think the question that we should be asking ourselves today is, if we want to see the right evolutions in grocery, in food, we have to put some of the standards upon them to be able to kind of get to a place where the data standard is really high. We need to get to a place where we can actually action that data and use it. This is by far the most uncomfortable thing we have to do, and this is a huge investment on our side. But this is holding us back in a big way. IT and grocery is underfunded, and it is holding us back.
Cynthia, you work with, or you're talking to some of the C-stores, and I think like food buying convenience is a really interesting opportunity. I think it's an opportunity for automation as well. Like I've seen some of these mini mart kind of type of IoT powered purchase cabinets that might just be popped up like an old red box would be popped up in some physical point of presence. Where do you see convenience buying going in car through automation points of presence in different places? Because I think it's an exciting opportunity.
Convenience stores largely see themselves as having to react to an entirely new demographic, right? Convenience stores are no longer primarily selling Coke and cigarettes, right? It's the old joke about your everything from your 7-Elevens to your gas station stores. And they're all trying to reinvent themselves into more of a where I can go and pick up a takeout food order. They're trying to reinvent themselves not only as QSRs, but also as takeout little mini grocery stores. So if you look at the world of grocery store and convenience store, and where, again, back to the car, if I'm just quickly running in to do a pickup, am I pulling up to a dark store, a grocery store that's a dark store that's just a pickup store? Am I pulling up to a convenience store because I don't want to have to run all the way back to the store to get to the milk so you can sell me cereal on my way to the milk? I just want to grab it and go out. So this is something that we're seeing happening in drugstores and in C-store and even in the gas station stores, trying to merge into that grocery space. And it's scary for grocery stores to start seeing that dark store or all the data that's being aggregated quickly be able to pick the top 20% of things that people need to run into a grocery store for, and instead of putting it in the back, putting it in the front, right? So that's a huge change that we see happening right now.
We have about a minute left, so we'll just go speed round, and I'll ask each of you about what you're maybe most excited about on the front of how the face of grocery may change over the next decade. Stefan, I'll start with you.
I'm going to go back to foundation models. You can, attribute it to me if you write an article on this. It's going to be the foundation models.
Cynthia.
I love where intelligence can help with shopping while I'm walking around and helping me pick what ingredients to grab and how to bundle things together, and where augmented reality or podcasts while I'm shopping are going to change how I think about shopping and advertising.
I think AI is going to take out so much of the cost and so much of the ambiguity around everything that happens from when someone says, I want to make something, to when you actually buy it, that we're hopefully going to end up with healthier, more affordable food on our shelves.
That's great. And we're out of time, just in the nick of time. But I would recommend that you give these guys a big round of applause, because this was a great panel. Thank you, guys.